My mom told me. You'll never be anything without us. I smiled quietly and said, Cool, then don't call me again. 3 weeks later they showed up crying on my porch. My mom's voice still rings in my head sometimes, sharp, self-assured, like she had rehearsed it for years. You'll never be anything without us. She hissed through clenched teeth, her eyes cold and gleaming with that bitter certainty only a mother could weaponize so casually. I didn't yell. I didn't even blink. Instead, I smiled. Calm. Cold. And I said, Cool. Then don't call me again. Then I walked out of the house and out of their lives. At least, that's what I thought. It didn't start there, obviously. No story like this begins with a mic drop and clean exit. This started way back, when I was a kid learning how to measure my worth by my family's disappointment. When I was 16 and made the honor roll, and my mother glanced at the certificate and said, Don't get cocky. Your brother had straight A's. It was always like that. If I achieved something, it was either expected, downplayed, or redirected towards someone else's glory. My dad? A silent partner in the whole thing. He'd nod along with her barbs, only occasionally grunting if I stepped out of line or dared to speak up. The worst part? They genuinely believed they were doing me a favor. We keep you grounded, my mom would say. We're the reason you're even surviving. Surviving. That was their favorite word, like I was some stray they found and kept alive out of pure benevolence. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs through college. Paid my rent. Cooked my own meals since I was 14. If I was surviving, it sure as hell wasn't because of them. But I stayed. For years I stayed. Until that night. Until the last straw. Looking back, the warning signs weren't subtle. But when emotional manipulation is the air you breathe, it takes a while before you even realize you're suffocating. It started unraveling one Sunday afternoon, 3 weeks before that final argument. My car had broken down, again, and I called my dad for help. He answered with a sigh before I even said hello. What now? He muttered. I told him the issue. He groaned, then added, We've done enough. You're a grown man. The call ended with him hanging up on me, mid-sentence. That was the first moment I actually sat still and thought, done enough? They hadn't paid for that car. I had. Every oil change, every tire rotation, mine. They hadn't. Done enough. They'd done nothing. That call was the start of a slow, quiet inventory. I looked back on all the times they claimed to be saving me, like when I stayed in their house after college, which they never let me forget. But I paid rent. I did the repairs. I cooked dinner half the week. And my mother, she told everyone I'd be homeless without her. That she was the reason I hadn't gone under. Then I found something. It was an old text thread on my mom's phone. She had left it unlocked when she went to shower one evening while I was visiting. A message to my aunt. He'll never leave. He's too scared. Too soft. We've got him right where we need him. That was it. The mask shattered. The idea that their cruelty was rooted in love, gone. It wasn't about helping me. It was about keeping me small. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the ceiling in the guest room of their house, hearing those words echo over and over. We've got him right where we need him. By morning, I knew what I had to do. The final argument started over something stupid. My mom wanted me to co-sign a loan for a new kitchen remodel. Said it was a small ask for all they'd done for me. When I hesitated, she snapped. You don't have a life without us. We kept you afloat all these years. That's when I laughed. Not the polite, awkward kind. The hollow, dangerous kind that feels like a dam cracking open. You've kept me afloat? I said slowly, deliberately. Or have you just tied anchors to my ankles and called it love? She blinked, stunned by my tone. My father looked up from the newspaper for once. Watch yourself, he warned. No, I said. I won't. Not anymore. And that's when she threw the line, the one that snapped everything in two. You'll never be anything without us. She said it like it was a prophecy, like she was sentencing me to doom with a smug satisfaction. But I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I smiled. Cool, I said. Then don't call me again. And I turned around, walked out of that house for the last time, and didn't look back. No yelling. No pleading. Just the quiet click of the door behind me. And in that silence, for the first time in my life, I felt something close to peace. I didn't cry on the drive home. I didn't scream into a steering wheel or punch walls. I didn't even listen to music. I just drove. Windows down, wind in my face, and that heavy silence in my chest slowly beginning to lift. When I got back to my apartment, I deleted their numbers. Every one of them, Mom, Dad, Aunt Lorraine, my cousin Drew, even my brother, who always sat on the fence like it made him neutral. I blocked them all. Then I sat in the dark and waited. Not for them, no, not anymore. I waited for that inevitable wave of guilt, the voice in my head that sounded like my mother. You'll regret this. You're making a mistake. But it never came. Instead, I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I got up, brewed a pot of coffee, and felt something strange settle over me. It was quiet. Peaceful. My phone didn't buzz. No passive-aggressive texts. No guilt-tripping voicemails. I didn't know what to do with the stillness at first. I kept bracing for the chaos. But it didn't come. Not yet. Instead, something else did. Opportunity. The first week was disorienting. Like I'd stepped out of a blizzard and realized I'd been living half frozen without knowing it. No more surprise drop-ins. No more. Hey, since you're not doing anything. Calls. No more dinner invitations that turned into interrogation sessions, about my job, my love life, my body, my attitude. Instead, there was space. It's a funny thing, what happens when the noise dies down. You begin to hear yourself again. I picked up extra hours at work, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And for the first time, I wasn't checking my phone mid-shift, wondering if my mother was going to start a fire I'd need to put out. A friend referred me to a new role, something better, with real growth. I applied on a whim. No pressure. No inner voice whispering, they won't hire you. You're not smart enough. You're not impressive enough. I got the job. A small team, better pay, real respect. 2 days after accepting the offer, I signed the lease on a new place. 1 bedroom, clean, lots of light, just outside the city. The kind of place where you wake up to sunlight, not car alarms. I bought a plant. Just one. A tall snake plant that stood by the window and felt like a quiet kind of company. It's strange the things you start doing when no one is there to mock you. I called an old friend I'd lost touch with, Sarah. We met for coffee, then lunch. Then dinner. She asked why I seemed lighter. I cut the rope, I said, and she understood without needing details. Confidence grew in quiet ways. I stopped apologizing when I walked into a room. Stopped saying, just, before my sentences. I carried myself like someone who wasn't being measured against a sibling, or graded for tone, or monitored for weakness. That's the part no one tells you about going no contact. It's not just peace. It's rebirth. But just when everything started to feel steady, when I could finally take a full breath and mean it, they showed up. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The kind of ordinary, forgettable day that makes surprise hurt more sharply. I'd just gotten home from work, groceries in one arm, phone in the other, juggling keys. My apartment smelled like basil and clean laundry, the way I liked it. Then came the knock. 3 fast. 1 slow. I knew that rhythm. My mother's rhythm. I didn't move at first. Just stared at the door like it might vanish if I waited long enough. But it didn't. Another knock. This one softer. Hesitant. I set the groceries down, walked to the door, and opened it. And there they were. My mother. My father. Standing on my porch like they belonged there. Like we were picking up where we left off. My mom looked thinner. Pale. Her eyes rimmed with red, and for a split second I thought, is she sick? But then I saw it, not illness. Desperation. Hey, she said softly. Like nothing had happened. like she hadn't spat venom the last time I saw her. I didn't speak. Behind her, my father shifted uncomfortably. No newspaper. No scowl. Just tired eyes and the faintest tremble in his lip. We've been worried, she said. We haven't heard from you in weeks. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You told me I'd never be anything without you. Her face crumpled. I didn't mean that. Yes, you did. The silence that followed was thick. Heavy. My father looked down at his shoes. We just want to talk, she said. Please. I should have slammed the door. Or told them to leave. But something in me wanted more. Fine, I said, stepping aside. You want to talk? Sit. Inside, they perched on the couch like strangers in a museum. My space was clean, warm, filled with books and light. Nothing like the house I grew up in. I stayed standing. Let's talk then. Let's lay it all out. My mother fidgeted. We know we haven't always been perfect. I laughed, short and sharp. Try again. We didn't know, she whispered. We thought we were helping you. You didn't help, I said, my voice low. Controlled. You controlled. You tore me down so I'd never leave. And when I did, you called it betrayal. Tears welled up in her eyes. My dad cleared his throat, but didn't speak. You want to know what happened after I left? I asked. I got promoted. I moved here. I'm doing better than I ever was under your roof. They stared. I didn't crumble. I didn't fail. I flourished, without you. My mom finally spoke. We were wrong. We see that now. I nodded slowly. Good. Then you can sit with that. Silence. Not rage. Not cruelty. Just power. Mine. And for the first time in my life, they had to listen. The silence in the room was dense, fragile, like glass suspended mid-shatter. They sat there, surrounded by the quiet echoes of a life I'd built without them. My apartment wasn't extravagant, but it was mine. The framed photo of me at the top of a mountain trail. The books stacked on the windowsill. The soft hum of a jazz playlist drifting from the Bluetooth speaker. All of it proof that I existed beyond their reach. I need you to understand, I said finally, slowly. This isn't a phase. I didn't cut you off to make a point. I cut you off because I had to. My father looked up, eyes glassy but stubborn. We raised you. No. I cut in. You monitored me. You controlled me. You humiliated me when I was vulnerable. You told everyone that I'd fall apart without you. You needed me to stay small so you could feel big. My mother flinched, like I'd slapped her. You think I haven't tried? I continued. You think I haven't twisted myself inside out to earn love that never came? Every report card. Every promotion. Every time I swallowed my own feelings just to keep the peace, I was trying. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. And every time you moved the goalposts. Too loud. Too quiet. Too cold. Too soft. You made me feel like I had to earn a place in my own family. My mother started to speak, but I held up a hand. No. You had your turn. You had 30 years of I'm your mother, I know what's best. Now you listen. She closed her mouth. I stepped forward, and my father's gaze fell back to the floor. I want you to sit in the discomfort. Not because I hate you, but because this is the first time in your life you've ever had to. They both looked smaller than I remembered. Not the towering, all-knowing figures of my childhood, but ordinary, aging, unsure. My mother opened her mouth again. I didn't know. I didn't know you felt this way. I knelt beside the coffee table, staring her straight in the eyes. You didn't want to know. Every time I tried to tell you, every breakdown, every time I asked for space, you called it selfish. Dramatic. You shut me down because admitting you were hurting me would have meant admitting you failed. Tears slid down her cheeks. My father, hands folded in his lap, didn't speak a word. And then I said the hardest thing I've ever said. I forgive you. Her head snapped up. But that doesn't mean I owe you access to my life. Forgiveness isn't a welcome mat. It's a boundary. She reached for my hand. I didn't move. I don't hate you, I said. But I don't trust you. And I don't need you. For a long moment, none of us spoke. My heart thudded heavy in my chest, but I felt steady. Grounded. Like I had stepped into my own body for the first time in decades. She pulled her hand back. My father looked up finally. So, what happens now? He asked, voice hoarse. I stood. Now? You leave. You go home. You think about the people you want to be. And maybe one day, if you do the work, we talk again. They rose slowly. Like their bones weighed more than they used to. Can we hug you goodbye? My mother asked, hesitant. No, I said gently. Not yet. She nodded. My father gave a stiff nod of his own. No protest. No resistance. Just quiet understanding. I opened the door. They stepped out. And for the first time, it was me closing it behind them. The door clicked shut behind them with a finality that echoed through my chest. It wasn't a slam. It wasn't theatrical. It was soft. Certain. I stood there for a long time, staring at the doorknob, one hand still resting on the wood. My body felt like it was vibrating, like it had been humming under pressure for years and only now had permission to settle. I walked back into my living room, sat on the couch, and stared at the spot they had just occupied. 2 indentations on the cushions. Proof they'd been there. Proof they had finally heard me. And yet, it wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was something else. Heavier. Stranger. Not sadness. Not grief. Grief had come long before I cut them off, grief for the mother I needed but never had, the father I wanted to trust but never could. That grief had passed like a fever, violent and shivering, years ago. This was something closer to relief. A relief so massive it bordered on mourning. Because I wasn't just letting go of them. I was letting go of the version of me they'd created, the small, quiet, agreeable version of me that existed only to earn their scraps of affection. He was gone now. That version of me died the moment I told them to leave. And in his place there I was. Whole. Messy. Flawed. But mine. That night I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed with the lights off, listening to the silence of my apartment, the kind of silence that used to make me feel lonely. But this time, it felt like peace. I replayed the conversation 100 times in my head, examining each word like a polished stone. Not to question it, but to remember it. Like you might revisit the memory of a victory. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like restoration. I got up around 2 a.m. and made tea. Sat on my balcony in the cool air, city lights flickering in the distance, and thought about what life looked like now. Not without them. Without their hold. I wasn't going to make space for guilt. Guilt is a trick memory plays when it can't tell the difference between obligation and abuse. I wasn't obligated to bleed so they could stay warm. I wasn't obligated to dim so they could shine. I wasn't obligated to stay in a story that hurt me just because they were the ones who wrote the first chapter. That realization settled into my bones. And with it came something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope. Not the fragile kind that depends on someone else's approval. The kind that lives in you and says you've survived the worst. Now let's build the best. The next morning, I bought new furniture. Nothing huge. Just a better chair for reading. A new rug. I rearranged the place. Let in more light. Then I sat down with my journal and wrote one sentence. I am no longer afraid to live well without them. I didn't know if they'd ever change. If they'd ever learn, or grow, or even try. That was their story to write. But mine? Mine had already turned the page. In the weeks that followed, something incredible happened. Nothing. No calls. No surprise visits. No drama. It was as if they understood, finally deeply, that the door they once held shut on me was now closed to them. And I didn't miss them. Not in the way you'd expect, anyway. What I missed, if anything, was the fantasy, the quiet hope I used to carry that maybe, just maybe, One day they'd wake up and see me for who I was. That they'd finally apologize without it being a strategy. That they'd embrace me without measuring how useful I was to them. But the thing about fantasies is, they keep you stuck. You sit in the wreckage of someone else's love, pretending it's a garden just because you remember the seeds. Now I was free from pretending. And with that freedom came the joy of living. Not existing. Living. I started going to the gym again. Not to chase some ideal image or earn anyone's approval, but because I liked the way I felt walking home afterward, tired and strong. I started cooking more. Real meals. The kind that take time, that make your kitchen smell like memory and comfort. I learned how to make rosemary chicken with lemon glaze and texted the recipe to Sarah, who sent back a voice memo of her laughing and calling me Chef Heartbreak Recovery. We started seeing more of each other. Quietly. Easily. She never asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. She just showed up, with calm eyes and crooked smiles, and made space for me to grow. She was the first person who didn't try to fix me. And maybe that's why I started to. I picked up painting again, something I hadn't touched since high school. I didn't post any of it online. Didn't try to monetize it. It was just for me. Canvases piled up in the corner of my bedroom like old friends I finally had time to visit. And somewhere in the middle of this ordinary, beautiful life, I realized the unthinkable. I was happy. Not in the glossy, cinematic way, but in the quiet moments. Folding laundry while humming to the radio. Laughing with Sarah over burnt cookies. Reading in bed while the rain tapped the windows. It didn't feel dramatic or triumphant. It felt earned. One Sunday afternoon, I ran into my childhood neighbor, Mrs. Clark, at a bookstore downtown. She hadn't seen me in years. "You look different," she said, tilting her head. "Taller. Not in height, just taller." I smiled and thanked her, and as she walked away, it struck me. She was right. When you stop shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's story, you finally start to grow. I wasn't haunted anymore. I was healing. Not because time passed, but because I finally gave myself permission to exist without their script. Without needing to justify my joy, or my silence, or my no. It was in that space, between the lines of their absence, that I found myself. And I liked who I was becoming. Months later, a letter arrived. No return address. Just my name, written in my mother's careful, looping script. I didn't open it right away. It sat on the kitchen counter for 2 days, like a ghost waiting to be acknowledged. When I finally did, it was short. Just a few lines. "We hope you're well. We think of you often. We're sorry. If there's ever a way back, we're willing to listen." I folded it gently, set it back in the envelope, and placed it in a drawer. Not in anger. Not in fear. Just clarity. They wanted a way back. But I'd already found my way forward.